You're listening to the Australian Hunting and Beyond podcast with Matt, where we talk about hunting, shooting, fishing, camping, and everything else that the great outdoors has to offer. Let's get into it. Alrighty, so tonight we get to welcome, YouTube sensation as far as I'm concerned, Jack Out the Back. Man, firstly, I love the YouTube channel. A little bit different from sort of the normal hunting sort of culling sort of videos because you are mainly focusing on camels out there, which is pretty cool, something different.
Yeah. That is our main pet species is our camels, and the channel itself, it really escalated, but it's not just shooting.
No.
It's, all the other aspects of the world, but it's definitely something that brings a lot of attention.
Well, I think that's a pretty good point to start off with. Do you want to talk about your location and where you're from? And I guess that sort of leads into the variety that's on your YouTube channel, because as I said, it's not just camels, there's plenty out there, and it's definitely out the back. And I love the play on words there.
Yeah, which ended up being, with my wife, we're going through a bunch of different ideas and everything. We're getting complicated. And she just goes, why not just Jack Out the Back? It's simple and works. So that was it. But in terms of location, or where I'm based, for Australians, cattle station makes sense. Americans, a ranch, but a ranch is nowhere near the size and scale of this sort of thing. Property that's just about the centre of Western Australia. I've only got 300 kilometres difference if I go to Perth or Alice Springs, which, it doesn't make sense or translate for a lot of people, but it's a long way from anything. It's 1,300 k's to Perth, which is our capital city here. But in terms of the size of the joint, it's 6 times the size of Singapore.
Yeah, wow.
And
it's a damn lot of land. And for anyone that's just listening to the podcast, feel free to jump over to YouTube and I'll put up some maps and things like that so you have a rough understanding, especially for our overseas listeners, mainly in the US. Just getting around on a station that big, that's a massive effort. How do you not get lost all the time? Because I've been to WA, I've driven across and done a fair bit of time in there. Very flat, very open, very arid land. That's got to be, there's a lot of hazards there in itself.
Yeah, it's the country itself is dangerous, and then you add the animals.
Yeah.
But the ways we get around here is we drive around, but a lot of aircraft work. So we're fixed wings only. And I guess in terms of not getting lost, it's just a lot of time on the ground, but using aircraft, you get that top layer perspective. So then when you're on the ground, you've actually got that image in your mind of where you are and what's going on around you. So you get a very good understanding of the area that you're operating in.
So with a lot of the camel culling work that you do, can you give us a bit of an understanding about the numbers on the ranch and the impact that they have on the ranch or station for different viewers, but the impact that they have for you?
Yeah, so we average 1,000 kills a year on the camels, and the impacts that they have on the property are competition for food and water. And they also target some species of tree which are, endangered or listed endangered in other states, but West Australia hasn't listed them as endangered for some reason. But they consume a lot of water, but it's not over a period of time. They'll just smash it hard and fast. So if your water points are exposed, so your bores or wells are exposed, they will go in there and they'll drink it out. And then if they can't, the water, they get a bit antsy and they'll start wrecking infrastructure if they can hear and smell where the water's coming from. So they'll chew bores and everything to pieces.
So that's got to be a pretty expensive sort of issue to have if they're destroying property while you're trying to, I'm guessing you put some gates up and things like that to restrict their access?
Yeah, so we've got self-mustering yards. So effectively yards around every trough. So the cattle are trained up to go through the yards, like spear gates, one-way gates, and the camels will tend not to go through those because they have been trained up on it. So it'll take them longer to work out how to get in. So they'll be excluded from that water, and they'll hang around if they know that there's water and smell it. They can tell when the cattle are getting a drink. So they'll start pressure onto that infrastructure as well. The impact on the feed as well, because we turn off around 1,000, 1,200 head of cattle a year. You've got 1,000 plus camels grazing that same land. Well, that's food that you could be putting into beef.
What are the actual numbers out there? So, like you're saying, you're averaging 1,000, culling per year on average. What do you have a rough idea how many are actually on the property?
They're a nomadic animal. They come in, like they transition through it. So we generally would say that we've got maybe 200 on the place all the time, but we keep aggressively on top of those numbers.
So when you're saying aggressively, talk us through that for listeners. I've seen a couple of the videos of thermal using different, aspects of that. And there is a bit of a difference between hunting and culling. And probably what I'd say is that a lot of your stuff is a bit more culling side of things, just to keep those numbers in check.
Yeah. And I enjoy hunting. I don't get to do it much. Culling and shooting, that's just all the time. So we're aggressive in the fact that we will dedicate the time and energy to exclusively killing them. And that sort of sets us apart from other properties. They generally will not prioritize it as a task, but because we've got a lot of the other parts of the station down pat, so we've got our water pretty well controlled, and we're moving in technology. So the remote monitoring means that we don't have to spend time driving around just looking at our water, ensuring that it's still good. We can just log in on my phone from anywhere in the world and make sure that the water's okay. Also gives us some really good intel on feral animals, because we can't be at every water point all the time, but we've got a camera there that's recording 24/7. We can see where they are, and then we can just mobilise and take them out.
Yeah, so on that premise, it is just sort of more culling and shooting. What do you guys do with the meat? Because they are quite a large animal. So I know different context being I'm on the eastern seaboard and it's quite lush, green, more obviously cattle farms as well, but sheep and you name it. We don't have camels over here. So the big issues at the moment, mainly kangaroos, which I think is a problem for you guys as well. We have a lot of deer, and pigs seem to be one of the major problems because of the damage they do just with rooting everything up. It's not just camels that you face over there, I'm guessing?
Yeah, we've virtually eradicated the horses. We've taken a bit over 4,000 horses off the property. They're generally located in a region, so they're territorial. So in that program, taking the horses out, we've dropped them down to something where we don't actually see them that often. And we are over the country very often. Because we're flying, we can scope out a lot larger area than if you're driving. Driving around here, it might look pretty sparse, but you're struggling to see 300 meters off the road. Whereas in aircraft, there's nowhere to hide. So we've taken out the horses, and we had donkeys. We've done a pretty good job on them as well, although one of the cameras is picking up a small mob of them every now and then, and I should probably go take them out, but that could be a bit of fun with some thermal equipment, go camp out and actually do a little bit of hunting.
So with the camels, well, I sort of got off topic a little bit there, because what are you doing with the meat? Because they are such a large animal. And do you eat it yourself? I know I've seen some things that you do some pet food and things with it as well. Is that something you are? Because I have had camel before in the Northern Territory, and it's absolutely delicious in my opinion, and just a great protein source that's on the landscape now. And if you've got to remove it, why not use it?
Yeah, well, it's free range meat. All we've got to do is shoot it and get it. So yeah, we often eat the camel. We'll treat it just like any other beef. It tastes amazing out here because they graze on such a wide range. They are very, very nice, and something I'm very fond of is biltong. So not the same as jerky for the Americans. It's it's not cooked. It's just spiced meat that's dried.
So I guess just to try and get some different perspectives on it, it's been really hot over here the last few days here in Sydney. So I think we maxed out at 39 or something like that. You guys, that's probably not a rare occurrence like it is over here. What are the temperatures you're dealing with, and how do you go about the storage of the meat when you're out and about, because it is quite hot over there?
Yeah, the highest when out culling was 52. Now, that's just on my Garmin watch. Yeah, they're not always the most accurate, but it was very hot.
I bet.
When we can get the meat, we do harvest it. And if the animals are in like dire conditions, no, you just don't want to eat it. It's just, but when you do have the time, yeah, I've usually got an angle in the car, or one of the ways that I actually do like prepping it. So after whipping back straps out, literally just get a towel, a wet towel, and you wrap the meat up, zip tie it up, or tie it up a little bit, and then hang it on the headboard of the ute so that it's got that bit of airflow over it, cooling, and keeps the damn flies off it.
That's something I haven't heard before, and I think that's a good little trick. And I suppose when you're also talking a proper towel, because I'm guessing if you're taking back straps. Actually, how does the back straps work with the humps?
Oh, it's really easy, but can also be quite messy if you aren't doing it the right way. The hump is just a big chunk of fat, and there is actually a layer, like a membrane between the fat and the muscle. So you can just open up on the shoulders, run a blade down the sides, and just peel the whole hump off. And then you're just taking the back strap. Now, back strap can be about 3.5 feet long. So the gist can be a bit.
Well, how thick would that be as well?
I'm picky. You start looking at which animal you do want to take it from, but we've pulled back straps where they are, they'd be 10 inches across sort of thing. So you've got, a massive, massive steak, but that's probably better as pet food on those old boys.
Yeah, I mean, that's like most animals, isn't it? Like the younger, it's obviously going to be a bit less, used muscle, so it's going to be a bit more tender and things like that. But very interesting at how big they are and the payload of meat from one animal. But it's sort of, I guess it's offset by the location of where they are, because it's a more difficult area to get them to anything. And as you said, from where you are on the station or ranch across to the main sort of cities, that's a damn long way to go, which is very costly and expensive to use that meat and transport it there if it was to be for like commercial purposes.
Yeah, and transporting them live is a real mission.
Yeah,
because you're limited to 20 per deck, and you can't run 3 decks all the way to where so that's 3 semi-trailers.
Yep.
You can't run them all the way to where they're marketable, and so you're only sending 60 animals on something that you could put 150 cattle on, and the value of the camel is less than beef. So you're losing money on them, and even just on the station itself, because if I drive out to each of my furthest water points and they're in loosely 3 different directions, it's 120 kilometres. So what's that, 60 odd mile?
Yeah, so it's a decent trek to it's not viable to look at it as an option to be able to use that meat all the time, unless it's for sort of that personal use. It's not going to be something that's considered. But it's one of the interesting things, because I believe you've had a bit of a opportunity to be on a upcoming TV show. And actually, I was lucky enough to speak to another gentleman last night who he's also made a cameo on the same program prior to me knowing this. So it's one after the other for this TV show. Do you want to give us a bit of an overview of what that was? Because that sounds pretty cool, and I'm very keen to see the outcome of this.
Yeah, so the TV show is called Eat the Invaders, and it's going to be on ABC in early 2025. And their whole premise is effectively scouting out people who use these pest species as a food source. And so that was a hell of a lot of fun, and it was a good experience also to garner the exposure of this wasted meat. Like when we were filming with them, we shot maybe 40 odd camel, and we only took meat from 2 of them. And there's more meat there than the whole crew could even eat. So it really is just highlighting that absolute waste of food. And there's parts of the world where people are starving, and hell, there's people in Australia that are struggling to get meat. We've got the vegan agenda trying to tell us that, it's the environment's telling us to eat less meat because it's too expensive. It's like, no, you're just not, you're not thinking about it creatively. Because in effect, if you eat camel, it's vegan, because otherwise it'd just be wasted.
It's one of the arguments. Yes, I think there's some holes in that argument when we talk about some of the vegan principles of not hurting animals to eat. And I think it's very misleading. And when you talk about the pesticides needed to protect crops and things like that, there's still animals dying, and they're probably dying in larger numbers because the poison's indiscriminate and just kills everything on site. So it's one that I don't like the idea of that. And then when we talk about like sort of the scale of land needed for that agriculture for cropping, it's quite large as well, which then clears the land, where I'm guessing a lot of your station is you don't need to clear it. It's probably going to be pretty close to how it was naturally, and that's how you just run the joint.
Yep, it is all natural pastures. So here we are not allowed to do any improvements for it. But on the idea of having to expand our cropping land to be able to keep food up, well, it doesn't work, because on one hand, we've got these greenies who are saying, well, you've got to not clear land, and you've got to produce more food from less land. So the land we've already got, and now we've got this carbon farming scam that's coming in and destroying productive land. It's pretty horrendous. Like, it's like they're trying to make people starve, because we are at some of the highest efficiencies in production per hectare in our cropping programs today. There's only so far we can take it. And now they're putting in more restrictions on chemical and fertilizer use based on data from other countries, which just isn't applicable here. But they find a piece of data from some obscure study in a country that's got nothing to do with us or our environment, and they go, hey, well, you should abide by these rules. And then, it just hurts really to see how stupid people are and believing that. You think people would be more aware of what it takes to actually produce food, and that's really a big part of the whole YouTube channel itself, is showing people what it is that goes into making sure that you've got steak on the plate. And it's sort of a good resurgence at the moment, where a lot of people in agriculture are starting to put stuff onto things like YouTube to show and tell their side of the story, which was a big part of what I was doing, is making sure that we're the ones showing it, even the dirty, nitty-gritty side of it. We're the ones who are telling the story without the bias of, these people are evil.
I think that's important. It's one of the things, I don't know if you've caught it, but I love Clarkson's Farm with Jeremy Clarkson from Top Gear. And I mean, let's be real, he's not the greatest farmer in the world, but just being able to get the exposure that he has with his star power has done wonders for farming and agriculture in the UK. And I think the more that happens, the better, because I talk about the disconnect on the podcast all the time with people that don't understand the whole process. And, I watch a heap of different things, especially coming out on Snapchat, Instagram, all that, of sort of vegans talking about things, and it's very clear that they don't understand the whole process, but they have such strong feelings about what's right and wrong. And I'm not talking about all vegans. I have some vegan mates who are understanding of the whole process, and they're wonderful. And most of the time, they're supportive because they understand that the majority of our farmers and how they do things are doing things well above what they need to do, because they actually do care about the animals. And I think that's a real big misnomer out there that people don't understand, that there is a lot of farmers that truly care about the animals far more than just a paycheck. And then this discrepancy of what people are seeing on social media, and that's broader than just farming, that's everything. So we need people out there putting the stuff up there to showcase what it's actually like, the hardships, because it's not an easy job. It is a very stressful job. In speaking to a lot of farmers, it's concerning. And I guess the rest of this government red tape and a lot of the things that are happening are making it harder and harder for farmers to just break even almost. That's really concerning because without them, we don't eat. And I don't know about you, but this lab-grown meat crap that they're pushing, I don't want a bar of it.
Well, the lab-grown meat has been banned in a couple of countries because it's, again, not being researched enough. But the people do not understand what it is and what it takes to produce the food that they enjoy. And they want to have their eyes shut to the reality of it. They're quite happy to. And because we, as agriculture, as an industry, have always sort of like kept our heads down and just kept on going, we haven't been able to get our stuff out there. And we're a bit on the back foot in regards to getting effectively the media out there, because you get these activist groups which have huge amount of money behind them and they can put together some very slick productions and they don't care where they get the data or the imagery from. And hell, they've even paid people to abuse animals to be able to further their agenda. And I go back to where you said that, the majority of farmers care for their animals. I think that there is a tiny, tiny group that don't actually care. And it's, painful at times when you've got a couple of really nice, cattle and you've got them in the yards and you're sending them off and you're like, oh, I like you, but you're going to become food for someone. They've got character and everything. So I think that they play on this ability to convince everyone that for some reason farmers hate animals and hate the land and hate the environment. Yet those are the three things that we need to survive. We need to have healthy soils. We're not going to try and poison it. We're going to use the tools to the best of our ability. We don't just pour chemicals out willy-nilly. We consider the impact of it. And then the animals. We like to treat our animals well. And there are times where, you can get hit by a cow or something, you get angry. But I always have to remember that there's a few thousand more of them that I have to deal with rather than getting angry at one of them because, I've got all of the rest of its species to deal with and I don't want to waste my energy on it. And in a lot of ways, that's sort of where I've come to the point with a lot of these activists and people have a crack at me. I just sort of go, well, I'm not going to waste my energy on you because I've got thousands to deal with and you're just going to waste my time and you're wasting oxygen. So go fill your boots somewhere else and enjoy.
I think farming is probably in the same boat as shooting and hunting, in my opinion, is that it's a complex thing. And for some people, they don't understand it. And I've had a lot of conversations with a lot of people that don't hunt and they don't understand, and they're more than happy just to go to the supermarket and get their meat. And look, hey, get it? I've got no issue with it because without that, farmers don't have jobs either. So I'm not against that, but I'm against people that want to stop people who want to go out and harvest their own meat and know where their food is coming from. And I sort of wish in a sense that, farmers, I don't like how they have to deal, well, a lot of them anyway, have to deal with the big major supermarket chains. And you hear it all the time, is that they screw them down and give them very next to nothing for their, profits and things like that. And I'd love to see a situation where more farmers, and I know it's happening in little bits and pieces, that they actually are able to sell direct to the public, but make it easy to do so and on a scale that is worthwhile, because that comes with a lot of complications too, but then actually being supported as well by the public. And that's more difficult because I talk to a lot of mates about that who don't have the big chest freezer like I do. Like I've got 2 chest freezers. That's always full of meat. And I'm pretty good at knowing how we can use that and get it out and defrost it and things like that. I know a lot of people don't want to do that. They want to just go to the supermarket, buy a couple of days worth, and then they'll go again, in a couple of days. And obviously, depending on your location in the cities, in metropolitan areas, that's easily achieved. But for me, I'd love to see this a big shift in society to go, you know what, we're going to support the farmer directly. Let's cut out some of these bigger companies who are screwing them over and then also making a decent amount of profit on other people. And also, let's look at the prices. If you go into a supermarket, look how expensive it is for healthy food, whether it be vegetables, whether it be eggs, whether it be meat, and then go look at all the crap junk food that is worth next to nothing. It's such a backward system. And then it has the flow-on effects a lot of people probably don't think about is that, with all the crap food that we're eating, that's going to impact people's health. And the more people's health is suffering, the more impact that has on their ability to put pressure on the hospital systems. Mate, we don't have enough nurses. We don't have enough doctors. There's just so many flow-on effects. I'd love for us to really take hold in this country to go, we need to get back to eating healthy foods that are literally just as nature intended. And, we've been talking about the vegan sort of stuff. I was looking at it today and we were talking about the difference between a meat patty and the Beyond Meat patty or something, similar, and the list of ingredients. And it is absolutely mind-blowing about how many ingredients are in there and that someone thinks that that's a healthy option. That's crazy to me. It just makes zero sense.
In the idea of getting back to know a farmer, we've got Queensland. They actually have the most disparate population in our entire country, and so they still have a strong Department of Agriculture, and they still have a good connection between the city and the country itself, and that's pretty awesome to see. They have a whole festival in the city in Brisbane about the connecting with farmers, but for everyone else, and then scaling into having good food from a farm. The big part of that is having the story and knowing effectively the person, because when you think about it, it's trust. You go into a shopping centre and you trust that meat is, good meat. But we know that Woolworths beef is pretty much just like the old off-cast cows that no one wants, and then they've been slaughtered and they're getting sold for premium prices. You go and have your story from the farmer, and we're seeing these little things pop up on Instagram, and I'm banned from TikTok. Can't even access it anymore. You see these things popping up there about small producer, paddock to plate stories, and that there's a bit of a resurgence in that, and that's kind of cool. And that's got a whole load of media and story behind it. And I'll be honest, that's not actually small producers doing that. That's the bigger companies who are, bought a story to sell it. But an honest and trustworthy level of that would be awesome. And I'm seeing it with our YouTube channel where people are going, oh, we'll buy the camel off you. I don't care if it's, not done to aqua standards or anything. We want the meat because we know that it's real meat. Just think about back in the day, even 30 years ago, you even think about your parents and their generation, the food chain, the cold chain and everything was nowhere near what we have now. Plenty of people survived. A lot of people are alive still, and it's had no ill effect on them. So, yeah, you've got to stop being super delicate about it. Here in Western Australia, we are effectively screwed on being able to do that whole paddock to plate story without being a big thing, because we can't actually do home kill and sell it. You can't kill something as a farmer, even if you've got a qualified butcher, comes out with a full kit. They can't come out, do the kill, and then sell it. That's illegal. That's against the law. You end up with massive fines. Other states, yeah, you've got it. You're allowed to do it. but they're cracking down on it. New South Wales, I believe that the Shooters Fishers Farmers Party pushed really hard to be allowed to let you guys do that. But other states, we struggle. And that's probably the biggest thing that's holding up things like camel being on plates, because you have to, if you're going to consign beef to sell private, we've now had it locked down here. The abattoirs, the 3 abattoir companies, they're no longer doing that. Where I, as Prenty Downs or Clare Downs, we can't consign and sell 10 beef units through a butcher, abattoir. They're all certified, and then we're allowed to sell them privately. They've now cut that out. You're not allowed to do it. And it's because we've got these large corporations who are boutique brands, and they have put the pressure on the abattoirs and said, well, we won't run our stuff through you if you allow this to happen. It is pretty nasty. So I come back to hunting and everything and getting your own food and fishing. Hell, we're popping a hiding here. I think it's an absolute shame more people don't do it, and we have to, as people in supposedly a free nation, we should be allowed to go do it, because you need to. It's got that more than just going and getting your meat. You've got that connection to the land and the environment and that understanding to a deeper level.
I've finally got my hands on a product that I absolutely love, and it is super simple, but also so versatile to use. This means that you can tailor how you want to have your coffee when out in the bush. If you want to support the podcast and get an awesome bit of gear that I know you will love, and how you can use the code AHBpodcast to get 10% off. The link can be found in the show notes, socials, and on the website. Final press, you'll love it. For me, it's important, and I think that when people go through it, I've always said, when you've harvested the animal, you've done all the hard work, and you're less likely to waste it, and you're more likely to appreciate it. Like, we went out on the weekend and a mate and I, Dan, shout out to Dan, he got a deer. So we got a nice little fallow spiker, and it was hot, and I'm going to get him on to talk about it, but I carried out 3 legs, essentially 2 legs in the shoulder, and it was a damn long way in a lot of heat. So carrying that game bag with everything else. And I was thinking about it the whole time, going that this is not something that's easy, like walking into a supermarket and throw it in a basket or a trolley and back into the car. It was a good 20-odd minute walk in the heat. And I was sitting there going, well, not sitting, I was walking there going, I'm not going to waste any of this meat because it hasn't been done easy. And on top of that, I've been there for the whole process. I've taken the life and feel a responsibility to the animal to be able to do that. Touching back on what you were saying too, like, I love what the states do, how they can just take an animal to a butcher. So if you shoot, a deer, you can take it over to the butcher, give it to the butcher, and they can turn it into whatever. It creates a job. There's, a bit of a financial transaction. You get back everything cut up, nice, neat, packaged. I don't understand why we don't do that here, because, I've always been at a bit of odds of it. I think we should be able to hunt our native animals. Personally, I don't understand why we have this protected sort of classification on them. So for people that might not understand, you can shoot kangaroos, and I'm talking about New South Wales because that's my area. You can shoot them, but you need tags for them. And there's got to be studies done on the area, and they've got to do a count and tell you how many you can remove from the landscape. There's no trust in saying to the farmer, hey, you do what's right for your land, all right? And I get it that there might be some farmers out there that just wipe them out completely, which is probably not what we want. But I think if there's a bit of an incentive, then people would keep them on the landscape too. Now, if you had a cattle farmer who then also could sell the roos really easily and it's a revenue, then probably going to sit there and think like that as well, depending on location. There's a lot of factors to it. I understand that. But I don't understand why we don't have the ability to just go to a butcher and say, hey, here it is. Can you chop it up for me, turn it in? I think that would then increase the ability to, I guess, get more people involved and have sources like kangaroos. I sort of see kangaroos, and I'm in Sydney, but on sort of the outskirts. I see kangaroos every day when I'm driving around. They are in massive numbers in a lot of parts of the country, but yet we still can't just go out and take them. I mean, there's so many examples. I talk about hunting in the snowy mountains in New South Wales. We've got wild horses galore down there, and they're a protected animal. Like, we're talking, when I go away, see hundreds. Like, it's ridiculous. I have no idea why we can't harvest them. Like, there's so many different silly rules, in my opinion. What are some of the what's the restrictions over there with kangaroos in WA?
Only if you're taking them for commercial purposes do you need a tag. So I'm carte blanche. I'm allowed to shoot as many kangaroos as I want. And we, as the primary producer, we're not allowed to shoot birds. So emus.
Yeah.
They're a grey area. American listeners, look up the Great Emu War for a good laugh. But yeah, we're allowed to whack as many roos as we want. And there's not enough people shooting roos here at all in Western Australia. We've made more food for them than ever before. We've got more water for them. Their populations go bonkers. And then we end up with diseases forming in them. So sandy blight in the roos. It's a horrible disease. And you end up finding them and you have to just whack them on the head. Yeah, we're aiming for a big program on the roos here. And that's where a lot of the thermal comes into it, because it's a lot easier at night time. I've done a lot of shooting roos at night when I was down south. And yeah, we have no restriction on it. And that's probably going to cause a fair bit of tension on YouTube when it comes to just showing, shooting kangaroos. Yeah, because people, coat of arms, you can't do that. They're a pest. They are identified as a pest. Yeah, and I smile about the horses in the Snowies and Kosciuszko. I could tidy them up very quickly. I've shot a lot of horses, and I did it in a short amount of time. And one of the things I used the most was a 22.
Yeah, right.
And that was a lot of very stealthy work, a lot of quiet work, and a lot of close work. And if anyone's ever hunted horses, you know that it takes nothing for them to get scared. If you think deer are flighty, no, horses are just on an absolute radar the whole time. So you just go as quietly as you can. And yeah, there's a technique to wiping out a mob of horses.
That must be over there. I'm guessing they've been hunted before or shot at before, because over here in the Snowies, they don't really move. Like, I've got some pretty good footage, and I'll chuck it on the YouTube, of literally horses getting spooked by us and staying and just running back and forth, not moving very far at all. And they would be an easy target for anyone that wanted to shoot them, because they don't go far down here. But I'm also guessing that's the fact that they don't fear humans, because we don't do anything to them, especially in the areas that I'm going. And that's a state forest where we're allowed to hunt, but we're not allowed to hunt horses. So we're allowed to take more of the invasive species, the pigs, the deer, the goats, etc. But we're not allowed to take those horses. So they're almost like this protected species within that area. But on private land, you are allowed to cull them, I believe. So it's very interesting. It's funny you talk about the kangaroos, like you just said. And I've been saying that for a long time. Any time that you just leave a species and they get out of control numbers wise, it's going to have that flow-on effect of disease and issues that come into it. And the gentleman I was talking about before, talking to last night, is Professor Andrew Pask, who is the lead head for bringing back the thylacine, the de-extincting the thylacine, and fantastic guy. Really interesting stuff what they're doing there, and trying to put them back in the landscape. And one of the things he keeps saying and talking about, and I'm in full agreement, is that taking them out of Tasmania, like we did obviously with them going extinct, has now meant that all these other populations have thrived, which increases competition for food, starvation, disease, all these different things that come with not having that apex predator on the landscape. And it's funny because people are an apex predator, but a lot of people don't see that anymore because we live in our cities and things like that. But we've always been on the landscape as that apex predator. So to take us away and to put all these rules and regulations and restrictions, you are seeing, species that don't have that predator, boom. And deer are the great example in Victoria, New South Wales, Queensland, here on the eastern coast, is that
we have them here as well.
Well, yes, I know you guys have them over there, and South Australia does too. And there's a perfect example. The bow hunting ban takes effect very, very soon. That's nuts. Like, again, they're talking about, I think it's the Limestone Coast down there in SA with the aerial culling and all that. And there's too many deer. We got to get rid of them, but we're banning bow hunting. Hold on. Like, that just is such a contradictory thing to say we've got too many and we're going to ban something that is removing some off the landscape.
But are you allowed to use a spear on them?
Well, this is the interesting thing, is it's bow hunting, isn't it? So
Good.
I don't know the legalities and the ins and outs of it, obviously not from South Australia. And I've touched on it and I've had a couple of people on to talk about it who are much more knowledgeable because they're from SA and they're all over that. It's a unique time. It's such a worry. Like we said here in New South Wales, the national parks that are just off limits for hunting, and we have deer right through them. It doesn't make any sense because they pay basically aerial cullers to come in and shoot them, which is at a cost to taxpayers. For what reason? They just leave them to rot. That then actually is going to impact other feral populations. It's providing a food source left on the ground. That becomes this flow-on effect. Actually, on that, so you talked about that when you cull the roos, cull the camels, etc. Do you have do you have populations of pests that benefit from the culling and leaving the meat there? Like, look, again, this might show, I guess, that I'm not up to speed with WA, but foxes, are they all the way over there? I'm guessing they would be.
Oh, yeah. No, I've got foxes, and it's interesting. We did a postie bike adventure. So we went down to one of the edges of the station, and we just cut it straight out overland. We just headed east. Like, because to my east, there is nothing. There's just it's the desert, but people think desert and it's, spin effects and nothing, but there's actually quite a bit of vegetation out there. After we got outside of our sphere of influence as Prenty Downs, we noticed that there were more foxes and more rabbits, less dogs. So less dogs and dingoes. It was fox and rabbit territory. And it was just surreal to be camped out there and hearing the foxes. So they're going on Prenty. You occasionally see a fox, and they are in incredible condition. But no, not really. I've never observed the dogs on the carcasses of camels. We generally try to burn them when we can, and they burn really well in the summer. It doesn't take long for that fat to turn into basically kerosene. Yeah, we've not seen any increase in the feral carnivores. And when you think about that, or pest carnivores, about the pests when we're talking about how the thylacines gone and how that led to big detrimental impact, we know that rabbits had an impact on things like the bilby. Now, people don't look at the kangaroo and go, what species have they pushed out? They're territorial, and they can eat roots. Like, they will dig up perennial grasses and destroy it, and that will remove food for smaller species. Kangaroos would be out there eating different grass, having a nibble on a tree, not taking the food from the micro marsupials that we have here. They're bastards like that, and people will have some sort of sentimental attachment to them. Again, like the horses, I can't believe it that you guys aren't allowed to just get rid of them, because they are a declared pest species. And the animals that you've got there are in horrible condition, and they are awful looking animals, and it's the best thing for them to be shot. But, people go, oh no, save the horses, save the Brumby, because they watched the Man from Snowy River once, and they think that it's romantic. It's, public perception.
It is. And it's funny. Look, I will say the horses where I go in the state forest are in bloody good condition. And there's a lot of feed. It's been a really good season, a lot of rain.
But it's the genetics.
Well,
So
correct. So
yeah.
that could be an issue there. But when we look at like what's happening on the different things, it fascinates me that we have so many people that make decisions. And I think you touched on it a bit before, like about more the farming side of it, people making decisions that don't actually know the impacts of those decisions and what they're doing. And it doesn't make sense. I don't know why we don't. But look, you can look at that and go look at politicians and go, they will be given a portfolio and they might have absolutely no idea or any experience for that portfolio. And so then they're going on advisors or lobbyists, or there's so many elements to it. And it's such a shame that there isn't a better system in how we can do that and look after that. But it's interesting. I'll take it back because I was calling some foxes in on the weekend, and that is good fun. And we had one, growl at us. I haven't been growled at before, so that was a new experience when we were calling them in. Came from behind us, so we didn't see him, and he was on the wrong side of the fence, so not much I could do about him. Are they a species you target, or you were saying that you don't see much of them on your station? Is that because there's more dogs? Are you allowing the dogs to stay on there because they don't impact? Do they impact the cattle as much?
Yeah, I've seen some horrific things with wild dogs.
Okay.
And a good example, we'd actually just put the rifle away and we're on our way home. And there was on the side of the road near one of our water points, a dog, and there was a weaner calf. The dog was eating it, like getting into his guts. It was still alive. It was conscious. And you're like, well, you're a bastard, and I can't shoot you quick enough. The foxes, no, I don't specifically go out and target them. And so the foxes and the cats, because you say that it's fun shooting foxes, there's nothing more satisfying than shooting a cat.
Oh, yeah. Agreed.
I cannot, and I'm going to touch on it in some of my upcoming videos about pest control, but I can't actually enact a dedicated program to controlling foxes and cats, even though I know they are doing damage to the environment and they are targeting native species. Some which we have on the property here are critically endangered. I cannot go out and go, I'm going to go shoot all the foxes I can find and I'm going to do a mission on them, because it could have a negative impact economically on me.
Mm.
And this is, it falls away from hunting, but in the world of carbon farming and all of this, if you've done a whole load of things to improve your production and everything, and it's something that's actually improving the environment, if you've already done that before you start doing this whole carbon farming scam, you cannot get any benefit from it. They just say, oh no, you just did that, it was good, you have to do something new. So there's a biodiversity credit, and it's coming in January 2025. They will not backdate or allow you to do any, gains or credits from prior to the date of that starting, or you starting a program. So if I go out and start protecting the native species, they will go, oh, well, you were doing that anyway, so you can't get biodiversity credits for that. Mm. And these things in this whole world of greenwashing and making the environment better are worth a lot of money. So we've been stung before with doing what was best practice for the country here, where we've introduced the solar, the trap yards, and a serious feral control program, which has led to the regeneration of the country, including endangered grass species. If I turn around now and start going out and targeting cats and foxes to protect the endangered species of birds that we have and little marsupials, things like bandicoots, we will never be able to make the benefit from that.
Mm.
Whereas I could in the future, I can actually sit here and actively allow the environment to get destroyed. Then when the date clicks over and they say, oh, you can get credits for that, I go out and start killing and I start getting paid for it. It's baffling. You get, how we're talking about the environment and looking after the country and controlling pest species. it just doesn't make sense that we've got all of this bureaucratic red tape that says, well, hang on, if you start doing the right thing for the environment before we say you're allowed to, we're not going to allow you to benefit from it, even though it's the right thing to do. So, that's my whole bit on this greenwashing thing.
Yeah, it's a fascinating time at the moment to just see what's going on in all different aspects right around the world when we're talking about everything that's happening. How did you get into all this? Because there's probably a lot of people out there going, you're living they're jealous and saying you're living the dream, working on a big cattle farm, getting out there to shoot all the time, just things that it does sound appealing and attractive. I'm not going to lie. So how did you get into all this?
Oh, well, in a funny way, we bought a station and then I ended up doing it. But I was living in Ballarat when we bought the property. I'd looked at it a few years prior and then we'd sort of ummed and ahed. Then we purchased it. Being the youngest brother, yep, I'm the one that gets sent out bush. No, it was literally a commercial operation. So we were looking at chemical pesticide resistance and concern about that in our cropping because we've got a farm in Esperance. So we went, well, we want to make sure that we don't end up with Roundup resistance. What's one of the best ways to control that? Let's start growing hay. Well, what's the best way to make money from hay? To grow cattle. What's the best way to grow cattle is to breed it yourself. And what's the cheapest way to breed cattle? Get a station. And in a really a smile, there's a mine that Dad established in 1993, east of Alice Springs. And when he started, we all went up and they drove up this way. And when it came to the time that the mine was getting shut down, he went, well, I'm going to drive up there because we drove up there to establish it. And on the drive, he saw all the camels and he went, nothing's been done with these. Couldn't something be done with it? And then he started thinking about station. And then, that developed over a period of 3 or 4 years. And then we ended up buying one, not with the intention of camels, but of running the beef. And the camels were just an extra part. And I've kind of enjoyed it out here. It's a project. There's a challenge there to it. There's things where I can apply my technology background to it and put it into it. And that's where I started doing that remote monitoring and playing around with that, which has led to me being, flying around the country to talk to people about technology. And I started actually filming the killing as evidence because, again, we were talking about people making decisions that have got zero idea. We had people in our Department of Agriculture over here saying, there's no way there's that many camels. It's like, well, here's a USB drive. Look at this. And then they got a little bit upset because, we can't have that on government computers because it, means that we have to acknowledge that there's that problem. We had people in the department saying that the horses aren't actually a negative grazing pressure. It hasn't been, the number hasn't been established. And we had a police minister say, no, a semi-automatic 22 is enough. That's all a farmer needs. And, I turned around and I've done a video, put it up, where I use a semi-auto 22 Magnum and I put a whole magazine into a camel and he just doesn't flinch. And it's all base of the skull. It's, I started filming everything pretty much as evidence. And then someone said, you should probably do some YouTube to show people. People will be interested in it. It sort of kicked off from there. And I think it was close to this time last year. And when I first put up a video where wasn't, because it's always been just normal work, and then we whack a camel, we shoot a few camels. But then there was just a whole dedicated, I'm killing a bucket load of camels. One of my mates turned around and said, who's pissed you off that you've put this up? What have they said this time that, has made you go, fuck it, I'm telling the entire world the problem we have. And I said, well, no one. No one's pissed me off, but we was looking down the barrel of some stupid gun laws here. And I sort of thought, well, it's time to really take the fight to them and show them and the world the problem in its reality with the context of we're trying to run a business, and these heads in Perth who have zero idea, zero sympathy, and just no concept of reality and what it takes to actually run a business or pull a trigger, what it's like. And there's been a lot of support for it from inside certain departments to shove it out there and tell them and make them listen, because they can't deny it now. They can't sit there and say, oh, we didn't know about the problem, because it's now all over the internet with over 15 million views. Cop that.
Well, it's hard to sweep it under the rug when you have that much exposure. And I think it's a very good thing that you're doing, getting it out there for people to see throughout both Australia and internationally, because it's something that I guess it's one of the beautiful things about technology. For all its downsides, social media and all that it is also one of the greatest things, because you can expose some of these things that potentially could have been swept under the rug very, very easily. And I'm guaranteeing it's happened many, many times before, where now it's a little bit harder sometimes. And thank God the misinformation, disinformation bill got defeated, because that was a way of basically shutting this down, in my opinion. So very glad that happened as well. But mate, I absolutely love what you're doing, because you are in a very remote location and it's a very interesting watch. So for people that haven't, do you want to tell them where they can find your stuff and follow you and subscribe? Because it is very interesting. And as you said, it's not just camel shooting, it's about all different parts of station life. And I love seeing when you're getting out there, the tech these days with Starlink and everything like that, and even us being able to do this remotely so easily. It's brilliant now.
Yeah, so I'm on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and naturally I'm on X, because it is really surprising to see how much you get censored on the Meta platforms and then also on YouTube itself. It is incredible. So no, I'm making sure that I've got those backups and stuff. And if people want to jump on, have a look, see what it is. And I always enjoy when people get angry and they're like, oh, just show us the shooting, don't have the talking. It's like, no, you guys actually need the education, the context.
Yep.
Yeah. It's what it's all about. So no, there's a struggle. It's real. We're making our way through it. And we are going to fight their misinformation with raw data.
Mate, I love it. Keep doing what you're doing. And, as I say, I post and ghost. Don't worry about the haters. You're always going to get them, and who cares? Like, at the end of the day, you've just got to put things out there and be true to yourself. So I thoroughly enjoy your content, mate. So really appreciate you coming on the podcast. And guys, get out there, check it out, because it is good stuff. All right, listeners, bye for now. You've been listening to the Australian Hunting and Beyond podcast with Matt. Thanks for tuning in, and can't wait to catch you next time. But in the meantime, if you want more, you can find it at linktr.ee/Australian Hunting and Beyond. That will give you our YouTube, Instagram, X, Facebook, you name it. We'll catch you next time.